All right. Hey, hello everyone. My name is Jari Salomaa. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Valo.ai, and I'm here with Rakesh, CTO of Growberry. Welcome, Rakesh.
Thank you, Jari. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so fun that you could join us. To get people a little bit more familiar with Growberry and yourself, would you describe with a few words what is Growberry and who is Rakesh? And then I'd love to deep dive into how did you end up in the Salesforce ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. I think probably I'll start with how did I end up in Salesforce, and that will probably lead to how we started Growberry and things.
Sounds good.
I started working back in 2005 with CRM systems, primarily with open source Java-based systems, and then I ended up into an Oracle ecosystem until 2012. And that's when I think Salesforce was almost still kind of an evolving product and ecosystem. So I got an opportunity while I was still working with my previous employer there to work on a large transformation program, including Salesforce, involving Salesforce. That's when I with my all CRM experience, I ended up into Salesforce and transitioned from an Oracle kind of a CRM guy towards Salesforce CRM guy. And it's been 12 years since now, never looked back.
Awesome.
So that's how I think I got introduced to Salesforce and also Finland at the same time. And then I've been part of the Salesforce ecosystem in Finland for so long. And then I've been part of corporate world for so long that I wanted to try something new. And when I decided to move out of my kind of previous employer, then we started kind of with some like-minded people, company called an ecosystem. There is a gap we felt in the Salesforce ecosystem, which we wanted to bridge through Growberry. Mm-hmm. And that's what we are doing at Growberry now with our new kind of avatar, like Salesforce says, called Xberry. So we are looking to revolutionize the freelancing market in CRM ecosystem in Finland.
That's amazing. So freelancing meaning that you are a network of opportunities, jobs,
yes.
Projects to be done, and then freelancers can become Xberries within the network to find new projects.
Exactly. That's precisely what we are trying to do. So we are trying to connect both demand and supply, and to keep this highly motivated and high-end consultants towards certain affordable prices for the customer who are looking for people who can contribute. And instead of being team leaders and carrying the team and trying to spend time more on managing teams and internal processes, I think this serves the customers much better because the people are more focused and generally more motivated because they are on their own. They take their career into their own hands, and their intrinsic motivation is most likely unlocked all the time.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. Could you give an example of the type of projects that freelancers might expect being an Xberry in the Growberry network?
So for we are doing for most of the Salesforce end-to-end an ecosystem-based projects. Currently, we have more interesting offerings for the customers, like a data cloud Kickstarter, and then also this agent Kickstarter, where we make use of Salesforce and offering of free licenses for some time to try and do a quick POC with some of the customer specific use case and show them how quickly these things like the data cloud and agent or AI can be enabled in their own environments with a little to almost very little investment from their side. So it's a risk free onboarding into this newer and let's say higher end of the Salesforce spectrum at the moment, rather than using only Sales Cloud and Service Cloud stuff. Yeah.
Got it. That's great. That's really helpful. So let's jump into know your title, CTO. You're technical. Yeah. You have years of experience on technical topics in Salesforce, but also outside Salesforce. Mm-hmm. And you also know the Valo solution to quite a bit. So would love to start by untangling the Salesforce history a little bit by Salesforce being founded in '99, built by humans, built for human flows, and then introduced apps in 2006 and more programmatic functions, and now 2024 AgentForce and a whole new way of interacting with agents and LLMs and new concerns are arising. Like you have, I think, the existing challenges around access and access control and what apps can do, what humans can do, how identity is managed in the platform. But now in the era of AI, a whole new concerns are raised. So I'd love to ask, when dealing with these technical implementation projects and looking into the organization's capabilities, permissions, and are we already living the agentic era, or is there more house cleaning and more kinds of foundational work ahead until we can get to this agentic AI era?
I'm afraid that it's probably the later one, because there is still more housekeeping and there is still more kind of work to be done in order to kind of embrace and kind of take advantage of this agentic era. Because, for example, in one of the kind of projects where I was still kind of overlooking now, or in many of the situations with customer, Salesforce has done this access control more granular and probably more easy to kind of create, because I ended up in many kind of situations where the roles and the profiles and the proliferation of these things is kind of little bit of mushrooming of the roles. For example, most of the kind of customer organizations are trying to replicate their HR organization into Salesforce kind of role hierarchy. It's the often misunderstood kind of a concept there, whereas the Salesforce roles are specific for the data visibility purposes. It doesn't have to do anything with who is the boss and who is working in which teams and etc. Unless there is specific data visibility issues. And that's something which we often kind of stumble upon. I haven't seen any particular customer organization yet who is using the role hierarchy in the correct way, matching their own kind of data visibility requirements. So that it's also because some of the legacy things, right, from in the beginning. So now identifying all such kind of improvement areas, and imagine the situation if an individual human being has more access than what they need, the likelihood of either misusing that access, either knowingly or unknowingly, is still kind of high. But imagine that more than required access to an agent. So it's most likely kind of there'll be more damage done than a human doing it, because human probably might know what he's doing or not. But if you are kind of putting a prompt to an agent, and the agent can probably use or expose that kind of additional access, which is actually in the first place not required.
Right.
So that's the reason why there needs to be a bit more streamlined on what do you need as a data visibility. And this data visibility is also evolving all the time with data clouds coming in, external data coming into Salesforce, and Salesforce's own CRM data kind of being there. And all this kind of mixed and kind of trying to make use of more data insights and analytics. So the data access is kind of the previously set role hierarchy kind of a thing might not be kind of suiting their current needs. And the problem in Salesforce, which I feel, is that once you define a role hierarchy, it's often not easy to change it without impacting the end users. And even if you ask me today, without the support of tools like Valo, for example, it is super difficult and time taking to kind of check the kind of the role hierarchies, how the current access control, the sharing rules and the profiles and all the field level visibilities, everything, and then try to modify into what we want. So considering this effort, generally this doesn't create me more business value. It kind of creates a tech value and reduces the tech debt for me.
Right.
So often it's hard to find investments into this thing. And that being said, this is the important activity to be done. But unfortunately, it doesn't create more business value, hence kind of less chances of business investing into this thing. And this creates me kind of a threshold to take advantage of the agentic era. And now this is where I feel tools like Valo is going to help kind of bridge that threshold, or lower that threshold. So you don't need to spend too much of effort on consultants and people in order to redo something which has already been done. So that's where I think this modern kind of tools with AI assisted tools like Valo is going to help. And this is one real use case which we are trying to do with a customer already.
Right. So we need quick assessments of the models so that we can enable AgentForce and we can enable the agentic future.
Yeah, that's precisely. And data visibility is one part. And then again, there are quite many kind of features and which needs to be upgraded. For example, many people used to use these triggers and process builders, and now everybody's using flows in order to really kind of embrace Salesforce's agentic era. It's kind of important that all these technical data items has to be cleared a bit. But the good part is well, like, yes, it's easy to say, I think, right? For the customers, they need to know what is the tech debt and what is the threshold we are talking about. So in order to kind of assess it quickly, well, like with little effort, how much this is going to cost us in order to kind of like be at a stage where we can like onboard agents, for example, or take data cloud into use. So for that, I think the tools and the assessments like the quick assessments which Growberry is offering, plus the tools like Valo in partnership is going to create that value quicker and with less kind of like cost to the customers.
And the end result is like AI-ready Salesforce, better security, both for humans, apps, and
agent.
AI.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, really exciting.
Yep.
Let's talk about the impact of Salesforce licenses and the way that, like, of course, a license opens all doors. In Salesforce, everything really in terms of access is tied to license, and there's many different license types.
Yes.
From core license, platform license, identity license, login licenses. We've been talking to a lot of customers this year and learned that many of them do like quarterly or annual license checks to better validate who's actually using Salesforce, what do they do, and trying to get a better picture by taking maybe interviewing, emailing key individuals like, hey, or they look at the login history to see when was the last time they logged in, and then they return the license back into the pool. Not always maybe realizing that the user might need Salesforce access a couple of times a year, end of the quarter. They might not be an active user, but they could be another kind of configuration more applicable. So curious on do you work with these problems and then also if you have anything for the community overall and the audience listening, some advice when it comes to understanding, managing Salesforce licenses and the complexity in mid-size or even larger orgs that have hard to see how my users are using Salesforce.
I think this is another kind of an often kind of an like neglected kind of a topic from the customers, because generally you purchase once and then like probably you only end up into once in few years kind of a negotiation with Salesforce, and you don't do this continuous kind of and like monitoring of license utilization. This is also another kind of a key topics, especially because with Salesforce onboarding new features, so it is in the benefit of the customer to kind of, and if they can find some kind of and like license optimization that creates some kind of a budget, they can always use that for trying the new features, which will create more value to them, both from the platform perspective and the platform effects and taking advantage of the platform. So, for example, like we have seen like many kind of and like situations where customers are creating their own custom reports to see that, okay, who is logging in, like, okay, what's the activity, monitoring that activity, and then trying to manually kind of go and trying to kind of release that license to the pool or allocate it to the that somebody who is in need of it. But the problem here is that it's for internal users still probably can be managed by few admins or army of admins. The larger the org becomes, then it is much more kind of and like dynamic, and in order to really utilize or kind of and realize the value of kind of using and optimizing the license utilization, it has to be more automatic than kind of a manual. And then like if we take the end user and the customer licenses or community licenses into picture, that becomes even more trickier, because I think now there will be obviously thousands and even millions, for example, in larger kind of like countries. So that's where I think it's impossible almost to kind of manually allocate and release. I know that we have built some automations like, okay, if somebody doesn't log in for 3 months or 6 months, you send an email and say that, okay, hey, do you still need this license? Or if there is no response, then probably we'll releasing it, etc. But still I feel that, okay, why wait till kind of 6 months of activity? So there can be much more kind of like you log in and then probably and automatically can be allocated.
More like dynamic provisioning and just-in-time provisioning. Authorization. Like when you need it, just give access.
Just to give access kind of a thing. And that's probably the kind of like future. And now I know that there are kind of a new ways of this login based licensing, etc., being introduced by Salesforce. But I think it's still coming up. And I mean, like this is another important topic that needs some kind of like assistance from the tools and apps instead of manual monitoring now, given the different license types. And sometimes it's not a kind of like 0 or 1. It's just that, okay, sometimes you have a license which is more expensive, whereas you can do with a license that is less expensive kind of a thing. So those are also the kind of like downgrades and upgrades that should be managed, which it also puts a different spin to the overall licensing optimization thing.
Right.
It's not that simple that, okay, either you have it or not have it, but sometimes you might have what you need.
Right.
So,
and of course, different editions have a little bit different offerings.
Offerings as well. And it also helps like to realize the value of platform, because you spend all the money or the budget into some licenses, and if you don't have that pool, and even if you want to try, this is something which often we come across. So the customers want to try AgentForce or some other new features from Salesforce, but it's always you need to wait for the budgeting season and etc. and all that stuff. But whereas in this scenario, if there is some, let's say, agreeable way of license optimization, creating some kind of a budget, that credits or budget can be used with Salesforce to try the feature and then make a compelling kind of a case to get the budget approved.
Right.
So those are the things which needs to be kind of like managed better, and definitely that is where I think the tools are going to help.
Right. Definitely a priority for Valo, and something we're very strategically focused on. Curious on a little bit like double clicking from the license. We talked about access controls earlier, but coming back to these permissions, and we also the Salesforce announcement on profile permission retirement, and then the announcement that like, hey, we're not actually doing that in the spring 26, I think it was originally communicated. But we're still recommending you do granular access in permission sets. And I think we've talked to a lot of organizations around their licensees and what kind of permission sets and accesses they have, often being a bit of a hybrid of profile permissions and permission sets. But all in all, like quite a challenging scenario when someone is asking who can see what and who is connected and who's actually actively using what they can do in Salesforce. And I wondered, like, have you worked on these kinds of projects? And what do you think is the reason that like many Salesforce customers and many orgs have quite wide privileges with their users? There's too many admins, and is it so that like the consultant or the architect, the admin is a little too lazy and they overprivilege the users, like, or is it just so that like people need extensive privileges to do their daily job? And now, how do you see then this kind of messaging from Salesforce? Should companies take the advice and start working their access controls in permission sets, or stay within the profiles? Have a hybrid solution, looking to something else? So what is Rakesh's advice?
Yeah, I think at least if you compare both this kind of like data access and then the kind of like your UI, who can access data and who can view the data. So the access data, I think Salesforce always had some granular kind of a ways of controlling the access by opening up access as needed. You have the org-wide kind of like controls, and then from there you have roles, and then sharing rules, and then like in manual sharing, etc. comes into picture. But it comes to kind of like who can view from the scene, from the UI perspective, it has always been profiles. So now it's there to be seen by everybody. The profiles have become a bit more monolithic and huge. So there has to be some ways to break it up, because sometimes like you have, like let's say you are controlling 200 kind of like things on a profile, and there are two situations where only two of them has to be changed. So then you need to kind of clone the profile and then manage them both going forward. So, and that has to be broken down, and the permission sets is the right way of kind of doing it. And Salesforce has been recommending to use permission sets for some time. But again, retiring profiles is probably a bit huge for Salesforce. Probably that's why they kind of took a back step in terms of retiring and kind of like moving towards permission sets fully. We had a kind of a project with one of the largest kind of, let's say, Salesforce customers in Finland, where we are supposed to migrate all the kind of profiles into permission sets because of this retirement kind of a thing. But when that kind of an announcement was taken back, so then we had to, we postponed it. Obviously, it became a less priority. See, I think this is what I was trying to say. So though this is a technical debt, though this is something which has to be done, if there is no kind of like cutthroat kind of thing saying that, okay, this will be retired, end of life kind of announcement, this will never get attention and business kind of an interest, because this is not creating business value, though it's important. It's important, but no business value. You redo something which is something working. So that's why I think at least the recommendation is that you need to have this granular kind of and like permissions, both in terms of data access control and also in terms of data visibility. So that way it's easier to manage, and it's easier to assign the necessary kind of and like permissions, not giving over permissions. And your another question, why does we always end up in a situation where we have more access than less access? It's because that's the easier thing to do, right? So because to give the right access at all the times needs more architecture and more work and more design behind it. But one easier way to do is that, okay, just make them everybody a system admin, so you can see all data and view all data, modify all data. So especially when you're using third-party solutions, you always have this kind of an integration users or system users, wherein one app is interacting with another app. So that's exactly where this access control becomes more trickier, because not all applications are like Salesforce. So they might have lesser kind of a privileges. You can't control it to that extent of granularity as we can do in Salesforce. So now in order to manage this, okay, if you want access to a third-party billing solution, make this kind of a user. It can be a system user or a human user, system admin. And that's the kind of a key kind of a like problem, especially because when an external user, we have seen situations in some customer solutions where in the production orgs, some third-party consultants or the system users, they are the system administrators with that access to do whatever they want in the Salesforce org. So one misfired query, one misfired kind of a data, kind of a modification or deletion can cause a lot of panic. It happened in some of the scenarios where the data was accidentally deleted, and obviously data restoration using Salesforce it costs the customer and it's expensive, and sometimes it cannot be reversed. And now I know that we have a lot of backup and restore solutions coming up, but it's an effort. So which could have been avoided in the first place, because by giving right access to the external users and also kind of having a control on who is the system administrator. Salesforce is very clear. Salesforce says that if you have, if I remember correctly, one Salesforce administration was for 250 users or something, is the kind of, let's say, best practice or something.
Right.
But nowadays I see that for 250 user kind of an orgs, we have almost close to 25 to 30 system administrators. So which is in the first thing which we do is that, okay, we don't need this many system administrator kind of users, and that is a reflection of a poor data access definitions and data visibility definitions. And in order to be on a safer side, the third-party consultants who don't have any help with tools, I mean, to be fair, it is manually difficult to kind of identify, especially if you are not part of the implementation, if you joined the kind of an org or the customer later. So to look into the legacy and correct those data access definitions and those things is difficult if you do it humanly and manually.
Right.
If you have tools, then it makes life much more easier and concrete, and then it shows the right way of doing things. Though it's simple, it is more kind of a manually intense work. And people can like have wrong interpret. The problem is if you interpret something incorrectly, it causes more damage, and that's why people just try to stay away from it. Okay, let's give more access and let's kind of like wash our hands.
Do you think it's also a consequence that like many Salesforce admins or architects are not security experts, and they kind of like maybe there is. I actually built a few of these Trailhead modules when I was at Salesforce, trying to educate the admin community. But like there is no kind of, there's a data architect, admin beginner, advanced admin, but there's really no security certification in Salesforce. Of course, we at Valo, we want to be the best security solution in the Salesforce ecosystem. And we are creating novel capabilities to do things that are hard, trying to make them easier. But do you think like, outside the tooling, the reason why permissions are the way they are is that people that are doing these decisions may not know exactly the consequences of their actions. It's interesting, of course, Salesforce's number one value, trust is our number one value, they say. Security is important. There's the shared security model everybody talks about, where Salesforce provides the tools, and then it's up to you as a customer or the consultant to configure it. But do you think as a consultant, I guess you take some responsibility of your actions. So ultimately, if you do misconfigure, it's kind of your fault, or how do you see that? Have you ever been in those kinds of scenarios? And how do you think overall admins who may follow this podcast, what they could do in terms of getting better at security and understanding the concept of least privilege I think
one of the kind of biggest reasons why people in Salesforce ecosystem may not understand the full security domain as such is that for the reason as you said, most people both on the customer side and the consultant side think that something security is inbuilt into Salesforce all the times. Because I remember one of the customer asked me like few years ago, so when we are talking about building a security kind of a solution, etc., when especially for integrations, so they were asking that, okay, why we bought licenses from Salesforce, and Salesforce is number one CRM and based on trust and etc. So why should I invest into security? That was the question which was asked. And also like looking at Salesforce admins and the kind of this new age consultants coming up who knew only Salesforce, for example, they think that security is packaged into Salesforce and you don't have to do anything up beyond Salesforce. That's one of the kind of common understandings at this point of time, which is not true. Obviously, you need to know security when it comes to SOC injections or cross-site scriptings or things when you are especially interacting with other systems, when you are fetching data or exposing your own data to the other systems.
Absolutely.
So that's where I think these kind of things, like security-specific kind of topics, you need to understand it better, both to appreciate what Salesforce can do it, and also to understand the delta, what you need to do on top of it to make the whole solution, end-to-end solution, kind of security tight. And that's where I think I see a lot of the Valo bringing in kind of a lot of value, because in this new age, you connect to a lot of apps, third-party apps, I think, which you might not even realize after a certain point of time.
Yeah.
So those connections are made. You click allow for Google connection or Google authentication. You did
very quick and easy.
Very quick and easy, and then you just don't even realize that you were maybe using it once in a year, or you use it only once. And even like the Canva applications or something like that, third-party things where you're designing something and you use it and you just leave it there.
Right.
So those are the things which probably might prove costly if they fall into wrong hands, and if somebody is trying to kind of hack through it. Especially we live in a volatile world these days.
Right.
So cyber attacks is also kind of a part of becoming geopolitics at some points of time. So given all that situation, I think it is important to understand the least privilege principle. I had one real life example with one of the customers I was working like almost a decade ago, where we are exposing invoices for the community, in the community users. So we realized that, okay, like if somebody can go and type to kind of change, let's say Salesforce row ID randomly, if they create doing it. So if they're lucky, it was showing the invoices of some other customers.
Right.
So all this is probably, I think, because that community user is having the view all data, which they shouldn't be. They should be able to view only their invoices, something.
Right.
But
granular access.
Yeah, but luckily we caught this using the security test, we're using OWASP or something at that point of time. Yeah. So, but that's a third-party tool which we need to specifically use and somebody to know it. So if it kind of is exposed in production, then it would have been kind of really bad kind of a publicity for the customer and everything. So these are the things which we need to take care, and that's why I always I strongly recommend. So when you are building enterprise solutions using Salesforce and other kind of tools, security needs kind of attention, and it is not kind of something given or taken for granted as part of a platform. And that's where I think I see tools like Valo and other kind of security testing and kind of measurement tools are really important.
You heard that, community. Remember to test your Salesforce development projects and code. So we are also at Valo security scoring all app connections connected to your Salesforce. There can be, of course, custom, localized internal apps that we have not seen or don't know what they are. But for public apps, apps in App Exchange, ecosystem apps overall, we build a security score to help organizations to make kind of informed decisions of the types of non-humans connected to their environment. And we're seeing, increasingly some open AI and, AI tools also connected into the environment. I think understanding risk in the context of security is also important, so that organizations can make these decisions that what level of risk they are okay with.
Yeah.
And and often that's a decision that in larger companies is done by a role of an architect.
Yes.
But not everybody has access to those architects or the MVPs or the senior people like yourselves. Like, you just can't stretch yourself to every customer all the time. So any thoughts on, like, now that AI tools are coming, and I guess many admins might go to an LLM and ask things, and LLM sometimes might give them a response, but is that the best response? Is it like accurate? How to get better in security without actually being able to talk to the senior, experienced people in the ecosystem? Like, is that even a possibility? Should customers hold their projects until they have access to the right type of people? Talk to the right type of company, find a partner. Like, what are some of the options for the community?
At least, as you brought up, the third-party apps on App Exchange are generally Salesforce certified. Even that's what the customers kind of prefer to. But majority of the scenarios where I ended up, I see customers using some really kind of well-known kind of apps, but they're still not Salesforce certified. So that means when there are multitude of kind of consequences from that. Sometimes their limits apply to the customer org, sometimes they are risky, and those things. And the reasons which I understand is, one, on the customer side, they don't even really know what's the need of, what's the meaning of Salesforce certified in terms of security.
Yeah.
And when I ask the app vendors, they say that Salesforce certification process takes a lot of time and they're in the queue of doing it. They've been telling it for years, for example. So now in that kind of situations where you need to use that app, that's where I think your app scoring. So as a neutral and third party kind of solution will provide some kind of needed insight into the customer side, and even for the architects, for example, because as architects we don't get access to the third party apps and their codes, right? Because those are packaged kind of managed packages. So we need to rely on somebody like Salesforce certification or a third party app scoring kind of a thing. And another important thing for all the community people is that security is not a one-time activity, it's a continuous activity. So that means you need continuous monitoring. It's not that you define security and you have a most secure solution today, but you don't take care of it for a few years now, kind of after that. It might not be necessarily the most secure solution after a couple of years, because that needs to be taken care, and there is this kind of a threats or kind of coming anew all the time, and that means your security solution needs to kind of keep up pace, and then your security definition needs to be kind of continuously revisited as well. It's a kind of an ongoing process. So that's one thing which people often kind of don't do. So okay, if we kind of get lucky, we do a one-time kind of investment and kind of redefine the security things, etc. But if you're doing continuous development all the time, so there is always a scope. But how do you kind of embed your security thing into your continuous development process with the right tools and right people will help the kind of customers. So that's what I think should be done. And with all this evolving kind of platforms, with evolving kind of threats, and kind of coming of age of the new tools like Valo and other kind of security tools. So how do you kind of keep up with these people? And definitely you can't wait to have access to the right people and most expensive consultants, etc. But it has to be an in-house activity as well for the customers. And for them, that's where I think these tools, and of course mixed with consultants coming at the right time and defining it so that then it can be taken care by the customer in-house teams, will be the right solution for the people.
Yeah, really some smart words there, and thank you so much. Hey, I think we're coming to the end of it, so maybe last question is that we are now in sunny Finland and enjoying the summertime. How is Rakesh enjoying his summer? Like, I guess as a consultant entrepreneur, it's a busy summer day for you. But do you have any events or activities? I guess Dreamforce is in October, so there's a few months for that. But how are you enjoying the summer?
I think at least, yes, thankfully the sun has arrived for the few weeks now in summer. And
yes, I brought the Valo.
You brought the Valo, I think. I have this summer activity. I play cricket at this kind of like Soman Mestri at the finished national leagues. So that keeps me a bit occupied on my personal front, and then also spend time with my family. And so we do some kind of a summer activities like kayaking or kind of like going for camping and those kind of things and activities, and visiting some beaches and lakes in Finland. So this summer activity, summer is probably the best time. And of course, thankfully, summer is a bit quiet compared to other, at least the July month is a bit quiet compared to other months in the year. So in terms of the customers availability, and so I can still manage my work and then time with family and etc. Especially I have family with a couple of kids, and my daughter is sitting here right here watching me as well. So, but yeah, that's the summer. Kind of a thing. And at least one thing which I came to, and after coming to Finland, I learned is that we enjoy summer, and I also like to learn to enjoy other seasons as well.
Right.
So in the right way. So yeah.
Very seasonal, and finish summer with the long days of light. There's a lot to enjoy in the nature.
In the nature, and we are close to nature as well, so which is good.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you, Rakesh. Thank you so much. And we're going to put our LinkedIn profile information below. So if you have any questions to Jari or Rakesh, reach out. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and we're looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.